It's GoPro time. What's up? I have been seeing this style a lot lately, specifically this style a lot lately. This very dusty shadows, very muted colors. We're gonna take a look at how to do this. This is the first picture I've tried to apply this editing style to, and it was tricky for me. But I think I got close enough that I can at least steer you guys in the right direction, get you started, get one foot out the door, and get you working towards developing this style for your own photography. Alright, this is where we started with. This was shot on a GoPro outside a couple of minutes ago. It's a picture of an ugly guitar that I want to get rid of. So if you guys want to buy that guitar, maybe let me know. And this is where we ended up. I'm going to try and work backwards here if I can. Anyway, to the original. Alright, inside of the basics, let's go to an as shot white balance. Here we go. Resetting the white balance, exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, clarity, vibrance, and saturation. Alright, we have everything reset here. We're gonna dig into my tone curve and turn it off. We'll come back to that. You know what? We're just gonna do that. We're just gonna turn everything off here. Get rid of all of it. And ugly picture. There we are. First things first, I'm the realist. To achieve that muted, dusty shadows, soft colors, warm colors feel, this shot is too blue. So I'm gonna push the white balance pretty hard to the yellow-orange side of things. Highlights have gotta be dropped. We're losing a ton of information here. If you look, basically all the information possible here. Shadows, we're gonna do the opposite, and we're gonna slam them up and lift the shadows, and we're gonna start to flatten out our image. One way that we can counter this huge addition of yellow and orange to the picture is with our vibrance and saturation. I'm actually going to pull some saturation out and then duck just a touch of vibrance. Clarity, I don't want to use a whole lot of this because it gets really contrasty, and especially on a JPEG image, it just gets out of hand. It's a very destructive tool. Alright, cool tip for GoPros. You probably already know this, but in case you don't, check this out. Under your lens corrections tab, there's this little button that says enable profile corrections. Click that button. Look at that. What that's doing, if you look in profile, this knows I'm shooting with a GoPro Hero 3 Plus Black Edition. And it's using a profile called Adobe Hero 3 Plus Black Edition to apply data to fix the barrel distortion that you get from shooting with such a wide fisheye type of lens. Let's go ahead and go to our tone curve, and this is where, ta-da, we're gonna start lifting our shadows. When you open your tone curve, this is the view that you're gonna see. This is the regular tone curve view. This little button, click to edit point curve. Click that button. It gives you an option, a drop-down menu here of RGB red, green, or blue. We don't really need to play with that for this shot, but there will be pictures where it matters. And all that means is that you're adjusting each of these levels for each channel. I'm pulling my greens out. I'm pushing my greens in. I'm pulling my greens out. I wish I was eating my greens. Get rid of that. Fix. So we're just going to play with RGB for now. We're going to play with all the colors at one time. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab this curve, grab this point that's already here, and we're going to start pulling it in, and we're going to see that our blacks thicken up. And what we're doing is we are taking the histogram and we are shoving it to the left. We're actually taking this wall and bringing it up to the right, but whatever. And that's just crushing blacks. As it goes on, more and more information is lost to the dark side. What we want to do is the opposite of that. So we're going to grab this slider and start to move it up. And that's going to start pulling this further and further away from there. Now, basically all of our blacks are not totally black, and we have a very, very ugly image. Pulling this back in, you start to get this little spike right here, which is really, really neat, which means that we're actually clipping what are the shadows of our picture, but aren't actually into the blacks for a regular display or for your eyeballs. So we're smashing and crushing blacks in a range where blacks aren't even. We're taking these blacks and doing this with them, and then we're lifting them up. And that gives us some contrast, but allows us to have nice, dusty, blacks that never really reach the full end of the black spectrum. So we're gonna leave that here. For this shot, I'm gonna scoop the mids just a little bit. That's okay there. For all of this stuff, just use your eyeballs, honestly. You know, knowing how to do this, I guess it's helpful that I tell you that, and whatever. But when it comes to this, if this looks better on your display for the image that you're working with, then use that. You know, don't just grab these settings and put them wherever I'm putting them, because every image is different and every end user is different. Work with your client, get them what they want, most importantly, but do so with your own eyeballs. All right, so our tone curve is done. Our basic tab is basically done. I would like to sync the exposure of this image just a little bit. I would actually also like to add just a pinch of contrast and maybe a pinch more clarity. And that starts to make our image feel a little bit more bold. It's also just a little bit cool still. So we're gonna run this a touch higher, and I'm gonna pull some of my whites down here just a touch and start to sync some of my blacks a little. Because now we know we've set our ceiling high enough that no matter how far I run my blacks down, they never get to this point. This black does not equal this black. So now I have the freedom to go and edit this image the way that I want it and get the look that I want it, and I'm going to maintain that dusty black appearance, which I don't know, I really like. Again, I just did this one time and then I started filming this video, so you're learning with me. Base tab set up, tone curve tab set up, colors. Let's go play with colors. I'm just gonna turn this on. Boom, different colors off. Yes, no, yes, no. What I did here, my greens were green and I took them to yellow. This doesn't matter at all. There really isn't any aqua in here. If there is, it's in these inlays, but by now we've muted that and gotten rid of it. So that can actually be left where it was. So what I did was I took my orange saturation, which is basically the body of this guitar, a little fence, and a little bit of this wall. Took it from 0 and I increased it just to kind of thicken some color back into that guitar, because when we go up here and we set our temperature high, we have to pull our vibrance and saturation down to fix that so it doesn't feel really hyper yellow. We're gonna lose our colors. We're gonna, you know, you're taking saturation out of the image, your colors are gonna get flatter. The yellow, I basically left as is, because yellow in this picture to me feels gross. So, if anything, you can even pull just a touch of it out. Greens, I wanted this grass to pop just a little bit harder, so I pushed it up to have nice poppy greens. My orange luminance, I pushed it enough to get some punch out of the guitar body, but I have to be really careful because this wall here, having some orange in it, I don't want to make this wall too terribly bright, and back here this is just getting really ugly, so I'm going to be careful with that and try and fix that a little bit later on. I'm basically just looking at this when I make this adjustment, and that's what's important. This is my face for this picture. This is the part that matters. So I get that to a point that I'm happy with. My yellow luminance I actually pulled down because that's basically the rest of my shot. And my green luminance, I punched this grass way up. I don't know why, it just felt better to me. So now we've got our grass nice and punchy, we've got our body nice and punchy. Our yellows are basically gone. We've got a pretty entirely orange image. Moving on from that, I added a layer of split toning to this, which takes some yellows, specifically this yellow, which is too yellow. Let's bring that back into the orange just a little bit. That's good. Split toning adds a certain hue to your highlights and a certain hue to your shadows. And what that allows you to do is to tone an image in a duotone style, basically. Right now I have really dark blue shadows and really punchy yellow highlights. So we're gonna pull this out, completely turn this off, and what I wanna do is just pour in a pinch of yellows in the highlights. And similarly, I wanna just add a pinch of blues into the shadows. So I'm gonna leave it like that is there, that's good. There's this balance knob in the middle, which is actually really nice. Shadows and highlights we can balance between. For this shot, that actually feels pretty sweet. So let's pull these back down to about where they were. There we go. Effects. Boom. Vignette. Tweaking vignettes. Free extra video. Here's how we do it. Slam the amount to any direction. I don't care what you do. Take your feather and get completely rid of it. Now you can see the shape of your vignette accurately. For this shot, I wanted a round vignette. Running this to the right gives me more roundness. It also gives me the chance to try and center this guitar. Boom. So more roundness I want. Running it to the left gives me just pinches in the corners. That's a weird look. I guess if you wanted to use this to make borders a la Instagram, then whatever, do what you want. But I want a very round vignette for this shot. Something along those lines. Then I can start pouring feathering back in. I want this shot to be very dusty. So I'm going to use my feathering as strong as I can. I'm going to smooth it out as much as possible, and I think that feels better than this kind of a vignette, especially because you have this weird line jump happening because this is brighter than this is. So nice soft feathering. Highlights tab, really interesting. All this allows you to do is try and bring back some highlights inside of the vignette, and this is a really cool feature. This is very helpful, especially if you have some important information outside of this vignette. So for this, I don't like what it's doing up here, but the sky is a loss here. There's only so much that I can do about it. So I'm gonna bring some of this building back in, and that's gonna also bring me a pinch of fence and a pinch of grass. So up we go. Now we have a vignette set in a style that I like. We blend it to taste. That looks fine. I'm happy with that. Vignette is set. Camera calibration we don't need to do anything with. I added this. Pink. Can you see what happened there? Pink. I took this area, I brushed in every place that you see is red because it was getting really yellow, really bright and bold yellow, and I wasn't crazy about it. So what I did is I took it, I cooled it off, and I lowered its saturation, and that takes some yellow out of that wall. It's probably actually a little bit too cool. Takes a little saturation out of that wall, and that just softens that up, and it takes some of the authority from this wall, and it brings my focus back to the guitar. That's just as simple as grab a brush, paint where you want to, and set the settings for that. If I was going to do anything up here, I would pull in a gradient. Get away from me. And then punch that down a little bit darker. You know what, actually that feels pretty good. I think we'll leave that. So here we have it. I think I hit about what I wanted to with this. I think I got it about where I want it. I'm not unhappy with this image at all. It doesn't look as good as the guys that are doing this regularly, but this is the first time I've tried this. I think that I'll be able to work with this and fine tune this a little bit better and make it a style that works for me. All right, guys. So there you go. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what I can do to change it to make it better. And otherwise, I will see you next time.